Hi everybody, my name is Dave Etler. I'm the producer of the Short Code podcast, and I'm an administrative services coordinator in the Office of Student Affairs and Curriculum. I'm here today to talk about podcasting. Our show, the Short Code podcast, is about podcasting from the margins of medicine, and it's a show that I host along with a regular crew of medical student co-hosts. Let me say that I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the CCOM social media workshop for clinicians and researchers. It was something I really wanted to do, and unfortunately I was ill and couldn't make it. But I'm here now, hopefully to introduce you to the subject of podcasting. So if you're listening to this, if you were in attendance at the social media workshop, it's a fair bet to say that you probably have ideas you want to tell the world about. These might be ideas that you have about health and wellness. They may be ideas that you have about research and about conducting research. They may be ideas that you have about, working with patients. I mean, you name it, I'm sure you have ideas. You might share these ideas typically in at a conference like the social media workshop, or in an exam room, or in a journal article, right? So those are all, of course, fine and very traditional ways of disseminating information. But there is also this podcasting idea. Podcast basically means that I and you can sit in your office and talk to the entire world for practically nothing. And by doing it, you spread your ideas in a way that's intimate, that fosters interpersonal communications, interpersonal connections, and that fires up people about your favorite subject. That's podcasting. Marshall McLuhan said that the medium is the message. And he meant that the existence of a medium of communication itself sends a message completely separate from the content of the message. So, for instance, his classic example of this was a news broadcast about a heinous crime. Of course, the broadcast contains the who, what, when, why, and where of the crime, but the fact of the broadcast's existence also sends a message about how society feels about crime, how society looks at crime. It's important. The messages of the podcasting medium are ones of intimacy because you are using it to speak directly to your listeners through a set of these. I mean, you're literally whispering in their ear. It's about democratization of communication and information. Anyone can set up a podcast, and there is no controlling authority. There is a message of personal perspective of the host. My personal perspective is something that I want to bring to the world, and so by using a podcast to do it, I am signifying its relative importance. It's also very much about the inherent value of the listener / consumer of podcasts. And there are ways to enhance that message, such as asking your listener to give you feedback by setting up channels through which feedback can come back to you, say a phone number or an email address. That sends a message that the listener is important. So, I don't know how much you know about podcasting, but I do want to tell you a bit about how it works. In 2001, Apple released its wildly popular MP3 player, the iPod. And, it was all about music in the beginning. But in 2005, Apple included in iTunes the software that connects to the iPod, native support for subscription audio services. That's a podcast. Now, a podcast is a portmanteau of iPod and broadcast, and it relies on an additional bit of technology called the RSS feed. RSS was invented by Dave Weiner here on the right and Adam Curry, who people of my age will remember perhaps as one of the original MTV VJs. RSS stands for really simple syndication, and basically what it does is send out a bit of information to any website or program that's paying attention that says, I just published something new on the internet. You can come look at it over here. So, podcasting is digital audio. It is compressed in a way that allows for easy and quick sending on the internet. And it is a subscription through an RSS feed. Some statistics about podcasting. In 2017, 40% of Americans 12 and over, or above 12 years, had listened to a podcast. This is up from 10% or 11% in the year following its release as something that following iTunes beginning support for it. Public awareness of podcasting has gone up dramatically since 2006, where it was about 24%. In 2017, we're at about 60% awareness of podcasting. For sure, a lot of this awareness has been driven by NPR and PRI, public radio, because they were among the first to adopt podcasting in a way that made a lot of sense. I mean, they'd already had the audio production chops. All they needed to do was to be able to store it and then send it out to the world on the internet so that people who weren't able to listen during the broadcast on terrestrial radio could go back and listen to it later whenever they had time. And that's really the core of podcasting, being able to listen wherever you have time to do that. In 2016, Edison Research tells us that there were 57 million monthly listeners to podcasts. So there's a lot of potential energy here. And that's energy that's probably a good idea to harness in your work. So where do you start? Well, assuming that you have an idea, you start with your audience. Who do you want your audience to be? One of the ways that podcasters and probably traditional broadcasters do this is by coming up with an avatar of your listeners. Here are three avatars. We've got Jessica, Greg, and Emily. Starting with Jessica. Jessica is a 23-year-old college graduate. She's living in the United States. She plans to pursue a PhD in biochemistry. She's a first-generation college grad, and while she's earnest in her pursuit of graduate education, she's still naive to the rigors and challenges of grad student life and research. Next, we have Greg. Greg is a 35-year-old professional living in the Midwestern United States. He's somewhat overweight, but healthy, and he wants to ensure that as he approaches middle age, he remains healthy because he has two young kids that he'd like to keep up with. Greg is bombarded daily with dubious health claims and news of breakthrough treatments, and is intelligent enough to know that these things aren't helping him with his goals. And finally, another example, Joanne is a PI at a large university on the West Coast. She loves her work investigating novel cancer drugs, but also loves to have fun and laugh. She takes her work seriously, but she doesn't take herself seriously. So, by defining our audience, we have figured out you know, how to aim, how to package our ideas for those people. Let's not forget the role that demographics can play in your avatar. I had ages for each of these, and you'll notice that I picked, young to middle adult ages. That's because the majority of listeners right now of podcasts are in the 18 to 54 age range, according to Edison Research. But to the extent that the 12 to 17s and the 55 pluses are being ignored, that represents an opportunity, perhaps, for budding podcasters to cater to their needs. Format is going to drive your show to a large extent. And there are several formats that you could consider. First, we've got on the top left, we've got the roundtable. This is a show format that enables everybody to contribute knowledge and discussion to a particular topic. No one person has to be an expert, but everybody can contribute. This is the format that we use on the Short Code Podcast primarily because it requires little preparation, and it means that we can put a show together fairly quickly. It is more expensive because you need more equipment, more microphones, more inputs. Next, we've got the one-on-one interview, relatively cheap compared to the roundtable because it requires only 2 microphones and a basic audio interface. It does require a lot more preparation. Think of Terry Gross. She is well known for her interviews on her show, which is on NPR and whose name escapes me for the moment. But she prepares a lot for her interviews, and she in fact probably has a team of people helping her to prepare. Finally, we've got the one-man show or one-person show. It's not ever a format that I really considered because I prefer to riff off of other people and to interact with other people. So not really for me, but people are doing it and successfully. One that I don't have a cute little icon for here is narrative. It's become very, very popular, and it's born out of the sort of NPR podcasting world. This is a very time-intensive and very expensive proposition in many cases. It requires a lot of preparation to craft a story that has a beginning, middle, and end, and which is satisfying to the listener. Very popular, though, and if you want to give it a try, go for it. For me, I just don't have time. I have other bits of my job that I do. There is a role for video in podcasts. There are video podcasts. I suppose it's, of course, best used for a subject that has a strong visual component. We've given it a try. I just don't, in the end, I just didn't feel like it, I felt like it was a solution in search of a problem for the Short Code Podcast. So we don't typically do that. Popular bit of discussion about podcasting is equipment. We have 5 co-hosts, including myself, so we have 5 microphones and cables. We have a computer interface, multiple channel computer interface, headphone amp. We have a Mac for recording, and I use my iPhone to play any audio clips, for instance, call-in questions, audio clips, things of that nature. In order to have a podcast, you need a website, specifically a blog. That blog is what automatically generates the RSS feed that I spoke about earlier, that says where your listeners can go to grab that information. You also need a place to store the audio, and I think all of these can be probably be provided by University ITS, but not by HCIS. My experience is that HCIS is, of course, very focused on the healthcare mission and just isn't equipped to provide blogs and audio storage. And of course, you need to submit your feed to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, any number of podcast directories so that your listeners can receive them. So what does podcasting do? Podcasting, for me, has created a connection between the Carver College of Medicine and prospective students. It provides prospective students with a sense of who we are at the Carver College of Medicine. And critically, as a piece of content marketing, it enables our listeners to see themselves here at the Carver College of Medicine. Otherwise, the study of medicine, medical students, medical education, all of that is very abstract to your average pre-med who knows intellectually about these things but has not typically interacted with members of a College of Medicine. It creates a connection between me and the medical students I work with. This was not true before 2010 when we started the Short Code podcast. I was bored with my work, to be honest. And once I started the podcast, I began to learn more about the students I was working with. I began to learn what motivated them, what didn't motivate them. I began to learn what they think about the world, how they think. And I began to see the stages of their journey from the beginning, first entering medical school, all the way to the end. And finally, it provides an opportunity for all of us to reflect on the journey. This is something that medical schools try very hard to promote through things like writing assignments and discussions with faculty and each other. Podcasting is yet another way to do that. And I think it's a very effective way to do it. And also to have fun while doing it. So that's it. If you want to check us out, theshortcode.com is where to find us. You can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, and in any number of places where fine podcasts are found. And I want to take this opportunity to invite any of you watching this to come and watch a taping, a recording of the podcast to see how it is we make this particular sausage. Thank you very much, and look forward to hearing from you.